Today on Church Public, great news. Only 3 abortions in Texas in the whole month of last December 2022, and they were all to save the life of the mother, which technically is not even an abortion, but that's another story. Also, Mississippi is banning trans surgery. Great job, Governor Reeves. We'll talk about that. And San Diego. Oh, San Diego, are you in trouble? You had a church meet in a school, and they talked about, well, Bible things. And of course, that is no longer allowed at all. We'll look at that story and more today on Church Public, current events from a Christian perspective. I'm Matt Odegaard, and this is Church Public. Welcome back to Church Public. Again, I'm Matt Odegaard, your host as always, and really appreciate you stopping by today. Your time is valuable, and I want to honor that. I would try to bring you current events from a Christian perspective so that you can know how to live out your faith. I want you to be able to live out your faith in the best way possible, and the way that I want to help you do that is by examining current events from a Christian perspective, looking at them from a biblical point of view, because I've seen a ton of conservative, quote-unquote, people who just don't really act in a conservative way. I've brought that up several times. I won't go over it again in this moment, but just know that I'm going to try to bring you the best Bible knowledge and Christian perspective that I can. Now, I heard somebody say this earlier this week, and I just want to say it too. You don't have to believe anything that I say. That's fine. I have my Bible open next to me. If you're just listening to the audio, I really appreciate you. If you want to see the video, sometimes it helps. Today is less video heavy from the clips that I will play, but it's always interesting from an audio and a video perspective. But at any rate, I am looking at my Bible. I'm reading through it. I hope you are too. My point is this: you don't need me to learn about the Bible, but I've been doing this for quite a while. I've read quite a few things, and I'm happy to help. I want to help you. If this is helpful to you, hit the like button, the subscribe button, the share button, the hearts. Do the 5 stars, the 5 hearts, whatever platform you're on. Just hit all those buttons, because that helps. If you want to write a little review, hey, this helped me, just write that. That is really helpful to me, because I want to get the word out so that people understand how they can live out their faith. That's my goal. My goal is to help you in any way that I can. This is truly a labor of love. So I appreciate if you do all of those things or any of those things. Again, I'm happy to help in any way that I can. All right. So today, we're going to start with this story today because I don't know. It was trending on Twitter. And I don't have the screen grab for you. You can go and take a look if you want. But this person named Aaron Reed, who I looked up and apparently is a man who is now a woman. Anyway, you know how that goes. Is talking about Girl Scout cookies. And that's what we're talking about here. And so this ad that I'm looking at it, 1.9 million views when last I looked. So 2 million of anything is a lot of things, right? So this this is an ad for Girl Scouts, and it says Girl Scouts is for every girl. Girl Scouts is for every girl. But what this ad is really about is not girls. It's about trans kids. This says it's finally time, trans Girl Scout cookies. Trans rights are under attack. The Girl Scouts have accepted trans girls and non-binary kids for years. Let's make the lives of some trans scouts a little bit better and get tasty cookies to boot. And then there's a bunch of, I guess it's personal anecdotes of people who are trans in whatever way that is, and whom are selling Girl Scout cookies. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. You can go and check it out if you want on Twitter and read through all of those. But here's the deal. Like the reason that I thought this was something that we should consider from a Christian perspective is it's like as if the Girl Scouts weren't woke enough with renaming Samoas, because apparently you can't say that anymore. But now this is where we are. You can buy Girl Scout cookies from boys pretending to be girls. And I shouldn't have to say this, but Girl Scout cookies are about helping girls become women. The Girl Scouts in general are helping girls become women with skills as girls so that they will be great functional humans when they're adults, which are women, because girls become women. And I shouldn't have to say this, but buying Girl Scout cookies should be about helping girls become women, not about helping boys become women. Because one, that's impossible, and two, let's not encourage this. Like, let's help girls become women, not boys become women. But anyway, that's all I really want to say about that one. We're going to move on to the next topic, which is a great topic. This is about Texas, and this is an article that talks about the amount of abortions that happened this last year. And of course, you all know that Roe v. Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court ruling in Mississippi versus Dobbs, a great ruling overturning an unconstitutional court decision from 50 years ago, the Roe v. Wade decision, and it has real consequences. And what I would like to say is it has real benefits now that some of this in some states are illegal, and this is fantastic. So just for reference, there were only 3 abortions in Texas last September, and these are noted in a new study by the HHS. I think it's Health and Human Services of Texas, so hhs.texas.gov, and there were actually 0 legal abortions in September. There were 3 that were performed to save the life of the mother, which, by the way, is not technically an abortion because it's saving the life of a mother, which is not an elective procedure in order to kill the little baby. It is a procedure that is medically necessary in order to save the life of a mother, which is a different conversation entirely. So I just wanted to bring that up and say, praise God. Here's a couple of the numbers that I found when I was looking at this. So this is the previous year. In the same month, so in the previous year in July, 5,700 abortions. In August, 2,200 abortions. This past July, there were 68. In August, there were 3. And in September, apparently, there were 0. This is great news, and we should praise God that He has, through legislation, saved the lives of so many babies. I love that. In other good news, Mississippi is banning trans surgery, especially for those under 18. So thank you, Governor Reeves. So this is according to, where am I looking at this article? Is this CNN article, Mississippi enacts ban on gender-affirming care for transgender minors. Now, just in case you forgot, gender-affirming care is a euphemism for medical transitioning, hormonally, chemically transitioning children, trying to change them from one gender into another, which physically is not possible. You can only change the outside. You cannot change the inside. You cannot change DNA, at least not yet. But even if you could, that's not real. Real life is you are who you are. You were born who you are. And spiritual life, from a Christian perspective, is God made you special, and He made you who you are. And to want to be something else is ignoring the beauty and wonder that God has made. And that is just really sad. But anyway, in the good news of this, Mississippi has banned trans surgery. And this is great news. We need to celebrate these fantastic laws and laws, frankly, that should be in every state. And it shouldn't even be controversial to say this, that children shouldn't be medically transitioned, their body parts chopped off, they're sterilized. None of this should be happening. But unfortunately, this is the world we are in, where the euphemisms are, this is gender affirming, and it's helpful. And this is what kids need to save their lives, is to medically sterilize them forever. Anyway, I love that Mississippi has done this. Let's see, should I read a little of this article? Mississippi's ban, which went into effect after Reeves signed it, the governor, it outlaws the prescription and administration of puberty-blocking medication and cross-sex hormone therapy in patients under the age of 18, and prohibits surgery related to gender transition. This law makes it illegal for people to, quote, knowingly engage in conduct that aids or abets the performance or inducement of gender transition procedures, end quote. Any healthcare professional found to be in violation of the ban will have their license to practice medicine revoked, and that is statute of limitations up to 30 years. I love this. This is fantastic. The governor himself said, at the end of the day, there are 2 positions here. One tells children they are beautiful the way they are. Yes, agree. That's how God made you. He went on to say they can find happiness in their own bodies. The other tells them they should take drugs and cut themselves up with expensive surgeries in order to find freedom from depression. I know which side I'm on, Governor Reeves said. Fantastic. And by the way, earlier this month, South Dakota enacted a similar healthcare ban. Utah put one on the books in January. Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas have bans on gender affirming care, though 2 of them have been temporarily blocked by federal courts. So this is fantastic news, and I love this. And we need to continue to celebrate when legislation is used to save lives, because ultimately that is what is going on here. Now, unfortunately, in in other news, we have to talk about more pro-lifers who are under suspicion from the Department of Justice. So we talked about Mark Hawk, who was arrested at gunpoint in front of his family in the wee hours of the morning, and who was guilty of the terrible crime. Actually, he was found innocent of the crime, according to the courts, but he was alleged to be guilty of the crime of standing in front of an abortion facility and protecting his son from a person who was being super aggressive with his child. But anyway, he was found not guilty. This is the Department of Justice targeting more pro-life Americans over standing in front of abortion facilities again, right? So this is, this is a group from Michigan. The Justice Department announced indictments against 8 pro-life activists stemming from a protest at a Mission abortion clinic from, February 15, it says. The protests were actually 2 years ago in August 2020, according to this article at the Northland Family Planning Center in Sterling Heights. And then the indictment was released on February 15th. So 2 years later, the DOJ is saying, hey, we need to go after these pro-life advocates. By the way, I have to pause again and say, because I've talked about this a bunch of times, how many of I think we're almost at 100 or 100 and more. I really haven't counted for a while. It was at 78 for a while, but then there were a bunch of more of pro-life facilities, churches, pregnancy centers that were firebombed, vandalized, windows broken. How many people have been arrested for that? Just a guess. Guess 2. The answer is 2 out of the more than 100 now. But we're going to arrest 8 people who stood in front of an abortion clinic. So let's see what these people did. I'm not going to read all these names. You can go look up this article if you want to, but 8 defendants were accused of conspiring to block the clinic and carrying out a blockade. So these are FACE Act violations. Again, that is the act that says you can't vandalize or hurt abortion clinic areas, but it also has provisions for churches and pro-life centers. But again, as we mentioned, not a lot of persecution from law enforcement in regards to that. But anyway, this also charges 2 of them with FACE Act violations in 2021 for a clinic in Saginaw, Michigan, which some of you know I'm familiar with. Anyway, Saginaw, Michigan, that is. Continuing on, when a patient attempted to enter the clinic to obtain prescription for birth control, one of the defendants refused to move and said, "We're not letting anybody in." And now they're facing up to 11 years in prison. So we're trying to save babies. These people were trying to save babies, and 11 years in prison is potentially their sentence. Again, there were people who vandalized, firebombed, spray painted, broke windows, and so far 2 people have been arrested. There have been no indictments I'm aware of at this time. Anyway, going on in this article, Catholic Vote President Brian Birch said that Wednesday's announcement further confirms the administration will spare no expense or resource when it comes to hunting down pro-life Americans. He accused the department of failing to show the same zeal in pursuing vandals who have attacked 81 pro-life offices and pregnancy centers since Supreme Court draft opinion was leaked May 2, according to the Catholic Vote Tracker. Okay, so here it says 81. At any rate, quite a few. So I think it's important to notice, to pay attention to the fact that this Department of Justice does not want you or anyone to stop babies from being terminated. And it's important for us to stand up for those that can't stand up for themselves. God calls us to do that, calls to defend the defenseless. And so this culture really wants its sacrament of abortion. We've talked about this before. I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but the sacrament of abortion, according to the culture, is the exact opposite and, in fact, mirror of Jesus and his sacrifice for us. Jesus said, I will lay down my life for you so that you can have life. The sacrament of abortion says, you lay down your life for me so that I can have life. It's the exact opposite. It's a mother saying, I'm going to terminate the life inside of me so that I can live my best life. Whereas Jesus stands up for you on the cross and says, I will lay down my life so that you can have your life for yourself. Those are vastly different things. And really, the reality is, as you get into Christian doctrine and following Jesus, Jesus then says to you, after that statement, you lay down your life. Jesus says, deny yourself, pick up your cross, die to yourself, and follow me. So this whole idea of you should die, baby, for me, mother, so that I can live my life is just the opposite of biblical reality. That's just not how we are called to live at all. So anytime, as we see in Mississippi, as in Texas and other states, babies being saved, we need to celebrate. Anytime we see people who are standing up for babies' rights and babies' lives being persecuted, we just have to bring awareness to that. So speaking of legal trouble for Christians, standing up for biblical values, we got to go back to my hometown of San Diego. Oh, San Diego, you are in such trouble now. So there is a San Diego church who is in trouble for meeting in a school. This article, according to the LA Times, the article is Scripps Ranch Canyon Springs Church. And they... So this is in the LA Times, Scripps Ranch Church hosted a controversial LGBTQ talk at a public school. Could the school say no? Question mark. Dun, dun, dun. I don't know. I just, for some reason, I'm reading it in that idea because that seems what's happening. So here's the summary, and we'll read a little bit of this article. San Diego, there's a church renting space in a school. And the church apparently has been in the school for like 20 plus years. But they bring in a speaker, and the speaker who says, wait for it, being gay is wrong. I mean, that may be countercultural, but it's biblical. Leviticus 18:22, Romans 1:27, 1 Corinthians 6, etc., etc. This is the stance of the church, not beyond the church. This is God's stance. As I mentioned, Leviticus, Old Testament, Romans 1, New Testament, 1 Corinthians 6, New Testament. I mean, God has been consistent throughout all of history that immorality is wrong. But we have a church who is in trouble. And this is a big issue. This is a big article. This is a big issue for Christian perspective and Christian worldview, because this one actually is a big story. It's bigger than it sounds. I'm kind of making fun of it a little bit, but it's bigger than it sounds, and it is going to have huge implications as it plays out. I'll read through a little bit of this LA Times article. On the first Sunday of the month, the pastor of a Scripps Ranch church brought in a guest speaker who talks about how she came to believe being gay is wrong. The venue was in San Diego Unified's Marshall Middle School, where the church has held its services for almost 2 decades. The speaker was Patty Height of Out of Egypt Ministries, who told her audience she used to consider herself gay, but now believes there was a false identity. According to her website, again, Out of Egypt Ministries, her work aims to help Christians minister to LGBTQ people believing gay is incompatible with being Christian. Correct. Pastor Jack Hawkins, who founded Canyon Springs Church 20-something years ago, said he had hoped it would start a conversation that would lead to healing and show his members how to better love their LGBTQ neighbors. But now, the event has ignited calls from some parents and activists for San Diego Unified to end its years-long rental arrangement with the church, leading to questions about what lines, if any, school districts or other public agencies are allowed to draw when it comes to providing space for religions and other community organizations. So what is happening here is the church did church things, said Bible things, and agreed with 2,000 plus years of church history. And now the community is telling the school district, you've got to get rid of this church. They're not allowed to meet in the school at all. This article, LA Times, says, even though the church holds its events outside of school hours and the church is separate from Marshall Middle School, some parents and activists argued students could still be affected by the knowledge that their school had provided a forum for somebody who condemns homosexuality. The Scripps Ranch Pride Council said, this is a school, a public school. This is a taxpayer-funded and thus should be safe, accepting, open environment 100% of the time. So, in other words, if any event happens at the school, and any belief happens at the school that is not cultural, and in this case, agreeing with LGBTQ, AAIP, hashtag plus plus, smiley face, then that must be shut down. So I hope you're beginning to see this is about much more than the church. It's about much more than the school. This is about the culture, and this is about the culture from two different perspectives. One, the traditional Western Christian perspective, and the new secular leftist LGBTQ AAIP hashtag plus plus dollar sign perspective. And there may be a court case that comes out of this. I'm not sure. We're going to have to see. We're going to have to see what comes out of this. But this is a cultural case. I want to talk more about that in a second. But I do want to talk about this pastor for a second, too, because I think this pastor made a wrong turn in what happened, and I'll tell you why. So this is a quote from the article. We are not trying to change anybody or transition anybody. What our goal is to love people where they're at, the pastor Hawkins said. And I think that's a mistake. I think this pastor is trying to soft sell and kind of apologize for bringing in a person who said biblical true things. But the problem is you can't apologize for the truth. I mean, you can try, but the truth is the truth. And the more that you soft sell it and say, we're not trying to convert anybody, we're not trying to change anybody, you actually are missing the gospel. I'm a little disappointed in the pastor who said this, because everyone needs conversion. I mean, read through Romans. Again, Romans 3, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We all have sinned. You've sinned. I've missed the mark. You've missed the mark. Everybody has missed the mark. It doesn't matter what your sin is. We have that sin, and we cannot get to God on our own. So conversion is, in fact, the church's mission. That is the believer's mission. That's Jesus' Great Commission, where he said, go and make disciples. And we are supposed to do this, and we're supposed to call people and say, hey, the sin that you're in is not great. Turn to Jesus instead. So to say, well, we're not trying to change anybody, we're not trying to help anybody, like that's ridiculous. Of course you are. If you're not, then you're not a church and you're not doing what you're doing. But I know you're a church because you had this event and now the culture and the community hates you for it. So you must be doing something right. So I would just say, have boldness and stand up for what is true and what is real and what is right. Anyway, I read through that and I was thinking, oh man, that's a little disappointing. But back to this, there may be a court case, and I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. In this LA Times article, it says, experts, however, say school districts cannot refuse to rent to a community group such as a church just because it does not agree with with the group's beliefs or messaging. According to Eugene Volokh, constitutional law professor at UCLA School of Law, school districts are not allowed to deny renting their facilities to a church or any organization based on the group's opinions because they constitute free speech. The answers are open and shut. The school district cannot constitutionally discriminate based on viewpoint. Its decisions about whom to rent things to, he said. So that's really good. I mean, that's a really good point. And I think it's important to recognize that the Constitution is clear, the free exercise of religion in the Bill of Rights is clear, and the First Amendment is clear, and we are allowed to do that if the school opens it up at all. But the community is going against this, and so this is really the point. There may be a court case, there may not, but the really big issue here is that the community is against this. There were, I think, 600 and some people on this petition that argued against having a church at all in the school because they say it hurts them, right? And that's the problem. So there is an argument against the biblical Western traditional worldview of man, woman, and marriage. And that's the two worldviews that we're battling. The traditional view that has been around for thousands of years, supported by Western civilization and the Bible, and this new view that marriage can be whatever you want it to be, and man can be whatever he wants to be, and men can be women, and women can be men, and everybody can be everybody, and nothing matters, and nothing is impossible. But that's what the culture says, and that's not reality. But this culture is arguing against it. So there is the trial in the courts, but there's the trial in community view, and that is going to be the thing that we really have to figure out how to work through and how to stand up against. And there's going to be more and more pressure to stand up against that kind of community ideal. There is one more point that I want to pull out of this article, and that is the principal of Marshall Middle School stressed to school families in a letter the day before the talk that the church's beliefs do not reflect the schools. So even before this talk had happened, even before the service had happened, the principal said, this school does not agree with the church. So regardless of what happens in the court or out of the court, a representative of the school is taking a moral position saying the old-timey Bible traditional man and woman marriage ways are not what this school or this community stands for. And there's probably a lot more schools, and there's probably a lot more admins where this guy came from and where this school came from. And so we're gonna have to watch this particular story and stories like this, because I think we're going to see more of it. And I think this story in particular is going to, like, you may or may not have heard of it, but it's going to gain more traction, because this is the kind of thing that the left will do. They will say, you can't hold your meeting here. You can't hold your meeting there. But what they're really saying is you cannot be a Christian in this school. And that's what they're saying. That's what they're arguing for. So you need to pay attention to that. Mothers, fathers, even students, you need to pay attention to what is going on at your school, because this is the view that most of them have across America. It doesn't matter. And meanwhile, in the UK, you can be labeled a terrorist, well, for reading books like these. So you may or may not have seen, again, if you're just listening, you didn't see these books next to me. I've got Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. I've got The Hobbit, again, Tolkien. I've got Locke's philosophy and some works by John Locke, a philosopher that was greatly influential in the founding of America, and some of the ideals of freedom and liberty. I've got some C.S. Lewis books. I've got George Orwell's 1984 and a couple others here on my stack. So, but apparently the British government has now warned us that reading books just like these probably makes you a terrorist. And you say, Matt, you're just making things up and being hyperbolic again. I wish that I was. So this is a report courtesy of author Douglas Murray. So Douglas Murray tweeted this out, but he wrote an article for The Spectator in the UK that was called "Can You Be Radicalized by These Things?" And so he wrote a column in The Spectator about the UK government's Prevent program. So the UK has a program called Prevent, and it was begun in 2019 to research what causes a Muslim to become a terrorist. That's where this began, this Prevent ideal. And they studied how people turned into Muslims and into terrorists, and that's what this Prevent was started. It contains this thing called the Research, Information, and Communications Unit, the RICU, I guess, or RICU, I don't know how you pronounce it, RICU, that looks into materials that cause people to become radicalized. The entire program is based off, actually, a World War II propaganda ministry that, according to Murray, might be considered a blend between Orwell's Ministry of Truth and C.S. Lewis's National Institute for Coordinated Experiments, which, if you are unfamiliar with C.S. Lewis, that spells nice. Both of them were talking about weird government agencies that basically tell you how you're allowed to think and believe and talk. So Murray went on to say, last week in the press reported an analysis done by Prevent's Research, Information, Communications Unit, RICU, in 2019. The analysis looked into social media users described as, quote, actively patriotic and proud, end quote. Murray says, oh no, anything but actively patriotic and proud. I know. Anyway. So this was written by William Shawcross, the review, and Shawcross, here's where Murray draws some distinctions, and I'm not going to get into it. And I started reading through this whole report, and it is quite dry, so I'm not going to highlight it. You can look up this Prevent RICU report if you want to. You can read through it if you want to, just to check my work and make sure I'm not making up things about Tolkien and whatever. But Murray points this out, and I think this is an interesting point. Shawcross, the article, barely makes mention of left-wing ideologies throughout the entire report. He doesn't mention communism. He doesn't mention China. He doesn't mention Russia. I would tend to think those are ideologies, places that cause a lot of chaos in the world and in governments. But in this article, apparently not. But Murray points out there's also a reading list of historical texts which produce red flags to RICU. These include Leviathan by Thomas Hobbes, John Locke's two treatises of government, and Edmund Burke's Reflections on the Revolution in France, which are actually really good books, but apparently bad, as well as Adam Smith, and radicalization can occur from books like C.S. Lewis, J.R.R. Tolkien, Aldous Huxley, which I have on my shelf, Conrad, and of course, 1984 by George Orwell. I don't know what to tell you, people. This is just the crazy world that we live in, where apparently reading these books, which I guess I shouldn't admit, I definitely have not read any of the books that are sitting next to me on my desk by Tolkien and Locke and Hobbes. I've got Hume in this one. C.S. Lewis, I have a whole selection that's definitely not on my shelf behind me. 1984, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World. I definitely have read none of those books, so please mark me as safe on your little article. And I guess, fortunately, currently, I'm not living in the UK, so at least for now, we'll hope that will do it. Speaking of just weird things that are going on, and I got a couple more. So if you've made it this far, thank you, appreciate it, and I'd love to say we're almost done. So Puerto Rico, which is not a state of America, but it is a municipality of America, right? Miss America Puerto Rico will now have a trans contestant, and so this is via People magazine. And so in People magazine, this article is Daniela Arroyo Gonzalez will be our first out transgender woman to compete in Miss Universe Puerto Rico. I was going to clip a picture for you, but you can look it up if you want to. I mean, I think you can guess what's going on here. Anyway, so this isn't surprising. This is People magazine. I'll read a little bit from this article. An openly transgender woman has been chosen to compete in the Puerto Rico Miss Universe contest for the first time. Daniela Arroyo Gonzalez was selected Thursday to compete in the Miss Universe Puerto Rico title, according to AP and New York Daily News. Transgender contestants have been allowed to compete for Miss Universe since 2012. A bunch more information, doesn't matter. In October 22, Thai businesswoman, I'm not even going to try to pronounce this name. I brought you this story actually a couple of weeks ago, so you can go and look this up if you want in the ChurchPublic archives at any of the audio sites or at churchpublic.com. You can go and see that. churchpublic.com/podcast will be the video podcast for that. So this Thai businesswoman is this is according to People, so I feel like I have to do translation for you. The Thai businesswoman who bought Miss Universe is a man who has a bunch of plastic surgery to look like a woman. And I was going to clip, I could play that for you again. But anyway, this particular, do I still have it here? Let me see. I'm just going to look real quick because it might be worth it to see. I'm not sure. If I still, no, I got rid of that one. It's in another file. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So this Thai businesswoman is a man who said, "I'm here for women." I'm sorry, I shouldn't have used that accent, because it's a trans man saying that we're finally gonna address women's rights by being a man leading Miss Universe. So now Miss Universe for women's power is controlled by men. And now the Miss Universe Puerto Rico contains a man who is dressed like a woman. I know. If you're not following this, that's fine because it's very difficult to follow, but that's what's going on. And here's all I want to say about this, and I'll move on. I'm sure. And I don't watch Miss Universe, Miss America. I don't watch any of these things. I don't care, and I don't want to watch it anyway. But I'm sure, even without watching it, I can guess. This is an educated guess, but I believe I'm right. There was a lot of plastic surgery that went on before. I don't know what the rules are. I don't even care. But there was a lot of plastic surgery that went on before this. But at least the actual biology matched the Miss Universe pageant. Now, It's just a competition over which plastic surgeon is better, because no one is real. The person could be a man, it could be a woman. You may never know. Well, you'll probably know. But anyhow, that's beside the point. This is just a contest to carve up bodies into whatever the person believes is the perfect form of a woman, whatever that means, because it could be a man who now looks like a woman. But whether or not that person is actually a man apparently doesn't seem to matter. So it's certainly not who is the best looking woman. This is now dudes who are carved up to look like women. The old feminist argument to stop objectifying women as just a collection of their parts has just come true. The Miss Universe is just a collection of parts being judged on which looks like the best woman, even if that woman is apparently a man, which should enrage women. But apparently this is the thing that we celebrate now. This is the problem. It's just a collection, it's just a competition of which plastic surgeon can do the best job making whomever look like a woman, whether that's a woman or whether it's a man. It used to be, apparently, about who naturally is the most beautiful woman. Now that's, I guess, out the window because you just have men who alter their bodies to be women. And yeah, if you're a woman, you should be enraged by this, because what's the point of being a woman if the best women can be men? This is the crazy culture that we're moving into. And from a Christian perspective, this is the thing that we have to talk about, because more and more we're going to see schools, we're going to see businesses, government, social media, celebrities, and beauty pageants tell us that Christianity is old, and these ideas are old, and marriage is old, and man is old, and woman is old, because men can be women, and marriage can be whatever you want it to be, and all of these other things that we have talked about. This is all outdated, and you just have to get rid of the tradition, the Bible, the bigotry, all of this other shenanigans. But here's the thing, everybody. This is where we're going to land. Reality is real. I know I shouldn't have to say that, but apparently I do have to say that. Jesus is still the King of Kings. He's the Lord of Lords. The world is under the authority and dominion of God, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, whether you admit it or not. It's just true. And you can lie to yourself, and you can lie to your friends, and you can lie to everyone, and you can do whatever you want to do. But the reality is there is truth, and you cannot escape it. For the believer, the only question is, will you live out the truth, or will you just go along with the lie? I got a message from an old seminary professor of mine. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I got an email from an old seminary professor of mine, and I'm not going to share his name, but he included pronouns in his email signature. And I was really disappointed. I was really saddened to see that. Pronouns may seem like no big deal, but the problem with pronouns is they are a lie. You are the pronouns you are. You don't get to choose. You don't get to change. You don't get to select whatever you want, because that just isn't real. When you make up words to make up ideas and identities, it's not real. God made you. God does not make mistakes. You don't need to identify what your pronouns are. You just are you. But this culture more and more says, if I speak loud enough, if I yell loud enough, if I put enough on the TV, if I put enough out into the universe, then what I want to be true will be real. But reality is real. And this is where believers, pastors, professors, and seminaries, we all need to stand up in love and proclaim the truth, because in the end, as our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ said, as recorded in John 8:32, the truth will set you free. For Church Public, I'm Matt Odegaard, and I hope that you keep the faith.